A text says, "You're on my mind." A bouquet from 1-800-Flowers says, "You're my everything." Heartfelt moments belong in the real world, not just your phone. For 50 years, 1-800-Flowers has helped millions of people make memories that'll last a lifetime with gifts they'll cherish forever. Their expertly curated arrangements and gift baskets ship nationwide with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Don't wait for the next big moment. Make it when you visit 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast.
911, what's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Walton, joined by Sergeant Walton. Glenn, how are you?
I'm good.
You need to shave.
I know.
You know, when I was a little bit younger, maybe, I want to say 15 years ago, I remember my mom calling me, and the moment she called, I didn't hear her say anything, but I could hear my dad in the background breaking down crying, and obviously something had happened. And at the time, you and I lived next door. And my mom said, "You need to come." So we had a little cutout in the fence and I ran next door. I think you were home and I told you to stay, if I remember correctly. And when I went there, my dad was basically having a nervous breakdown. And I go to him and I hug him and he told me, I'm dying. And I knew what he was experiencing in having a panic attack with this nervous breakdown. And he had a lot of pressure, things happening with my brother. And there was a lot going on all at once. And I remember after maybe an hour or so when he was finally coming down from everything, I told him, "Daddy, you need to lay down now because I'm sure you're feeling exhausted." And he looked at me with this look like, "How did you know right now I'm feeling so tired?" And it's because I was just sitting and patient and listening and being there for him and supporting my mom. And I knew it was because everything that he had been experiencing basically came to a head all in that moment. And so I think that a lot of the times, especially when you are a first responder, it can be very difficult to understand the hidden costs of being the strong one.
You know, it's something that kind of came up for me right when you were saying that is I think we, on a regular basis, start carrying a lot of the weight from others all the time, and just stuff starts stacking up, not only from others, but for ourselves, and not effectively combating that and dealing with that as it arises. We hold on to it, we push it down, and we're always sitting with it, but never really truly addressing those issues that we hold on to on a regular basis.
This can be for men and for women, but I'm thinking of a lot of men that come to mind where they share stories with me of them always being the composed one, the one who's supporting others, the one who has to hold everything together. And quietly, I don't think a lot of us realize all of the isolation and the emotional suppression that comes with that, and that feeling that there's basically no space for you to be the one to ever fall apart.
And it's funny because we were talking with our best friends last night, and our one friend said, "You know, Ashley, you listen, and you're really good with listening, and not only listening, but being able to evaluate anything and everything that's going on, being able to see almost that 10,000 foot view from the perspective of removing yourself emotionally from it, but being able to look at the thing, whatever it is, factually."
My response to that was because I'm constantly looking for who wants to kill me. And the other half of that is a lot of it comes down to when someone has a story, us both recognizing that their story is not about us. And it's natural instinct for us to want to have commonalities amongst ourselves. And we do that by interjecting like, "Oh, well, one time or my dad too." And it's not always necessary. And I have found that my life has become so much more fruitful by just showing up and holding that space for other people. And there are times where I need to remind myself to do that for me too.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those misconceptions that we construe all the time, and that is the biggest thing that we worked on, that we've achieved within our lives is understanding it's not about us. And that's really massive, because it starts taking that burden off of you. So looking at it from the first responder realm, like we go to these calls for service and we're dealing with, say it's a domestic, saying it's a child abuse, whatever it may be. You can think of the most tragic incident. And if you remove yourself from that dynamic of saying it's not about me, and you're looking at it from the investigative mindset, and you're looking at the entire situation, being able to do what we're supposed to do as a first responder and show up and investigate it to serve justice to those victims.
Here's the issue that I see time and time again in law enforcement in particular, and the psychological concept here is called role entrapment. And it happens when basically a person becomes locked into a specific identity, like the strong one, for example. And it can become very difficult to learn how to step outside of that without feeling guilty or without feeling like you're letting other people down. And when this happens, it actually limits your emotional expression. And I think that it even reduces your access to be able to get support for yourself.
Yeah, and I think when we always are using that mindset, as you explained, let me tie myself into your story when you're expressing that, and you start putting that burden on yourself, trying to show that person that, you've gone through that too, when it has nothing to do with you in this instance. You start bearing that weight on yourself on a regular basis when this specific incident has nothing to do with you.
And it could be difficult to identify when this is actually happening. And I think that for a lot of people, it could look like difficulty asking for help, or maybe you feel responsible for everybody else around you. Sometimes I've even seen emotional suppression or shutdown happening, and you're usually the one that other people are depending on. And I think that just creates this constant level of loneliness, even when you think that you're the one who's just being involved in trying to support somebody else.
Yeah. And it's funny, as we're talking about this, I just thought of this story that we have a social worker that's tied into our office, and she's always on the phone talking to her friends and family and coworkers, whoever it may be. And then she hangs up the phone, and it's funny because she'll look at me and go, I'm always the one everyone comes to. Where do I get to go to be able to go to someone for that? And I explained to her, it's like, well, tell me more about it. And then she doesn't know what I'm doing, but it's more so of, she's just like, she's always there for others, but she feels that she doesn't have somewhere else to go when she's feeling frustrated, or she's holding on to those issues, not only for herself, but for others.
And that's a great segue into how we actually combat this, because last night when we were talking with our friends, you were saying something along the lines of like, Ashley always finds herself in these relationships with people that they're very enriching, but Clint, that it's enriching in both regards, on their end and on my end. And so what I have found is the easiest way for us to be able to get that level of support for ourselves is to make sure that we're doing things to cultivate our community. And by something as simple as when someone messages me for the first time, one of my go-tos is I will never just send them a text back. I always send them a video back, because I want people to know right off the bat, whatever this relationship could be, whatever the extent of what it is that you might need from me in terms of support in the future, I want you to know right off the bat that this isn't something that is not meaningful to me. It's very powerful when I do receive messages from people and instantly I can see something to where there's a crack in vulnerability. And I take great honor in the fact that people reach out to me with their concerns or their things that they're struggling with, because I know from so many conversations that I've had that sometimes people just don't have that outlet otherwise. So by opening up that vulnerability and just doing, as you said, with that female, is creating that safe space for somebody. It's not necessarily you like stating the obvious. You're just creating that space.
Yeah, and it's having that space and time, and the biggest thing is once you're letting them unload on you and be able to express their stuff, it's remembering it's not about you in that instance. Most time they just need to unload. You don't need to carry that load for them. They just need to unload. They don't need to hear your story. They don't need to hear how to fix the problem. They just need to be able to express the issue and being able to hold that space and be there for them.
And if you're that go-to fixer, the one who always solves everybody else's problems, you're not going to like hearing this, but something so important is to set your boundaries. I know people who have their phone on 24/7 and they are the ones that, I'll be there in a drop of a dime. And that's great. But when you haven't slept for 2 days and it's finally time for you to get some rest and you're 2 hours into that rest and your phone is on and somebody calls you and they're crying because their boyfriend broke up with them, we need to work on boundaries around that. And there's ways to do it with grace and to be gentle, but to learn how to say yes to you first so that there's more of you to be able to say yes to other people.
And that's what I think the biggest thing to take away from this is you always have to be able to say yes to yourself first before you can effectively pour into others.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.